welcome to the Weekly Blitz. Welcome to the Weekly Blitz. Welcome to the Weekly Blitz at number 4 with me, Malik. Hi, how are you? I'm Malik, and this is the Weekly Blitz, number 4. Featuring again my beautiful dog Hercules that I love so much, and his squeaky toy that he can't seem to be anywhere else with right now, which is super annoying. Do you know what else is super annoying? This is just a little bonus, little off the dome riff for you all. Fuck Ethan Klein yet again. This piece of shit shows his true colors once more. He contacts Steven Crowder from Louder with Crowder, who I think is also a big dumb fucking idiot. But that's not the point here today. You know what I'm saying? That's not what we're here for. But he contacts Steven Crowder because Ethan had said some really, really, really stupid shit, and Steven Crowder called him out for it. Ethan's like, yeah, bruh, you don't need to think. Just let everybody do the thinking for you. You don't need to think for yourself. How easy is that? How great is that? And Steven was like, oh, that's pretty dumb, pretty stupid fucking retarded dumb fucking thing to say. Pretty dumb thing to think as well. You should always think for yourself. As those of you gotta close that window, there is an apocalypse going on outside. Which is crazy. It went from being like 249 degrees Celsius to, it's still pretty darn hot, but now there's like thunderstorms all over the state, like tornadoes and whatnot, which is super rad. Super rad. I love it. Just kidding. I don't actually love it. I don't like storms. I don't like loud noises in general, to be completely honest. I don't like fireworks because they're loud. I don't like loud shit. Stuff shouldn't be loud. That's besides the point. But anyway, Ethan, he invites Crowder and like, oh, let's have a debate, which I know, like, Crowder's dumb, but he should have known that, like, that slimy little piece of shit's gonna back out, because that's what Ethan does. Ethan's not smart enough to have a debate, right? And he doesn't have a spine. He's got no spine, no balls. So he agrees to this whole debate, and then he goes on, they have a little chat, and before the debate can start, Ethan says something fucking stupid, and he pieces out. Of course he does. Like the coward he is. Can't even defend his own self, and has some little Twinkie-looking guy come and, like, defend him. It's like, and he's trying to play this off as a win, and his stupid freaking 7-year-old audience thinks, oh yeah, Ethan got him. Ethan destroyed him. Oh, that's so lit, man. That's so lit. Oh, dab. Or whatever you stupid fucking kids are doing these days. No, that is the pinnacle of weakness. Ethan is the pinnacle of someone that used to have some type of relevance because he was funny and talented, but now he goes along that Logan Paul route, where he just says, types in www.whatspopular.com, whatever's at the top, that's his opinion. He can't form an actual opinion by himself. He's a fucking idiot. But that brings us, someone that I used to look up to greatly, and then as time goes on, I learn more and more about them. I learned the truth about them. I learned the facts, the history, the lore, the real story, if you will. And just like Ethan, I found there's another legend, some might say, another fantastical figure, someone people can hardly fathom today. Someone they call Alexander the Great. To me, personally, I like to call him Alexander the Overrated. Because that's what he is. There is no human being in the history of the world more overrated and more freaking than Alexander the Third of Macedon. Now, he did some stuff. He did some things. It's whatever. But before we even go into this, y'all need to understand, Alexander, when he was born, the day he was born, he was the second most powerful male in Europe, in the known world at the time. Okay? Well, not in the known world, but in Europe, for sure, without question. Philip II, his dad, was the greatest statesman, conqueror, warlord in the history of fucking Europe. Until Alexander did what he did. You know what I'm saying? So, Alexander, his dad sets it all up for him. And let me lay it out how. Not only is his dad the king, he's set to inherit all that. His dad has built this army, this brutally effective, dominant army, led by some of the greatest commanders in European history up to that point in time, who would later go on to be some of the most influential kings in ancient history, known as the Diadochi, the successors. All of them became kings for a little bit. Some of them more than that. But in that army, this army that rolled over Greece, just friggin' bent them over and butt fucked them, Alexander didn't build that army. Alexander didn't train that army. Alexander barely had... I could have been put in charge of Alexander's army at the death of his father, and I could have conquered the... Matter of fact, honestly, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. So, before Philip, Macedon was garbage. It was just a friggin' duh. And don't get offended. This is just the me version of why Alexander is overrated. I'm not a historian. I'm just a fucking guy. Okay? So, chill TF out. Macedon wasn't really considered like part of the Greek world. They were considered like a little less barbarian than actual barbarians. But the Greeks considered them Macedonians. The Macedonians considered themselves Macedonians. They did not consider themselves Greek. They considered themselves part of the Hellenic world, maybe. But, shout out Calypso's Strawberry Lemonade. This stuff is very good. And that's where that burp came from. Probably going to edit that out, so don't even worry about it. They considered Macedon this backwater. And then Philip, he did not feel too hot about that. You know, he was pretty upset that the rest of the Greek world looked at him like a just ugly piece of shit. Looked at him and his state like that. Well, he had the benefit of, around that, you've seen the movie 300, I'm sure you've had. Well, when the Persians came in, they conquered a lot of Greece, right? They conquered Macedon, I'm pretty sure Thessaly, like some other places, like a lot. At the Battle of Plataea, it wasn't just Persia versus Greece. There were Persia, its entire empire, and some other Greeks fighting the Greeks. So Philip had the benefit of all the advances that being under Persian rule had brought to him, and the fact that he was just a savage and was sick and tired of being called a piece of crap. And when he's a little younger, he spent some time in, I'm pretty sure it's Athens, with, I want to say it's Epicrates, but I'm pretty sure that's wrong. Epicrates was this sandal maker, or the son of a sandal maker or something, and he did a lot of reforms. He, like, lengthened the Greek pike, lightened their armor, or not, it wasn't a pike, he lengthened their Greek spear to a little bit longer. He lightened their armor, and he sort of made them work better. And Philip, he saw this. He saw what his friend had done. He was like, okay. His friend, who he probably was getting plugged in the bum by, his pederasty was a big thing in not just ancient Greece, but in the ancient world in general, which says a lot about humanity. I'm just saying. But Philip, he takes all this stuff, after he's done being a hostage, he goes back to Macedon and he implements this in his army. He gives them a sarissa, which is like a 20-foot long pike, when the rest of the Greeks were using like a 9-foot long spear, right? So right away, you can see how, if you can hit them and they can't hit you, there might be a couple problems. Plus, he drilled his army more, so they got that discipline, that practice, and they all had that same feeling of, oh, you're talking bad about us? Then, he calls all these people, brings them together, after he fucking smashes the Greek world. Absolutely, like, the Thebans, the Athenians, all of them, not the Spartans, I don't believe, because Sparta had got their fucking nuts clipped at this point in time. But Philip goes and he subjugates basically all of Greece, which is all of the known world in Europe that matters right now. Like, that's the only part of the world that really matters. It's not the Persian side of the world. Okay? So Philip sets all that down, and then he starts looking over east, and he's like, damn. I really would like to fuck up Persia. And he's got this veteran army. He's got the money. He's got the plans. He's ready to go. Then he gets assassinated by, people say the Persians paid someone, but let's really think about this. Who stood the most to benefit from the king of Macedon being killed? Was it, I don't know, the heir to the throne, maybe? Someone who Philip hadn't been doing so hot with, who he had said, you know what, motherfucker? I might disinherit you. With his crazy, weird mom. I'm just saying, Alexander probably killed his dad. And so, after that, guess who becomes king? He inherits these plans made by his dad. The most dominant army in European history up to that point. The greatest commanders in history up to that point. And the excuse now to invade Persia. Now it's a whole lot easier for Alexander to go on and do what he did after his dad had just spent his entire life absolutely decimating anyone that could have posed any sort of credible threat to you. The barbarians, they had been put in line, we'll say. And I say barbarians, I don't, like, they were just, that's what they call it. Greeks call them barbarians, I'm going to call them barbarians. I respect. The barbarians had been put in line. The Hellenic world had been brought in line. Except for Sparta. There's actually a little interesting story. Don't know if it's true or not, don't care. But Philip sent a message to the Spartans, and he was like, if my army has to come into Sparta, there will be nothing left. We will, men, women, and children, will put you all to the sword to sell you into slavery. Sparta will be forgotten. And Sparta sends back a one-word reply, and that one word is if. And Philip never invades. Now, could Philip have probably just steamrolled Sparta at that time? Probably. I just thought that was a cool story. That has nothing to do with it. But, so Alexander's got no competition anywhere near. Not on the continent. And Persia, who had been the big dog, had a lot of... These weren't the days of Xerxes invading Greece. You know what I'm saying? This isn't the days of Darius beating the Assyrians. This isn't freaking Cyrus going and doing whatever Cyrus did. You know what I'm saying? Now, Cyrus is the one who beat... You know what, actually? I'm going to look this up because this really bothers me. I can never remember it, but I look it up literally all the time. Okay. Darius was the third. Bardia was the second. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so it was Cyrus. Cyrus the Great. It's either Cyrus or Darius, who are two Persian kings. One of them is the only non-Jewish person to be referred to as the Messiah, which is pretty neat. But anyway, this isn't the days of that. This isn't, the Achaemenid Persia at its height. Persia had a long decline, right? They didn't that's... Some can say, like, the Greco-Persian Wars, in my opinion, they were a response to Athens fucking around, and they burnt Athens to the ground. So, after burning Athens to the ground, you can say they had a bit of a decline. A lot of civil wars, a lot of horse people coming in. And as anybody who knows anything about history, horse people and civil wars are not a good mix. You do not want to be fighting these mounted people after you're fighting yourself, right? Persia just divides itself up and fights itself. Okay? And Persia doesn't have a professional army. Maybe, and I say maybe because we don't know, they had a professional corps of 10,000 immortals, but that comes from Herodotus, who is called the father of lies, who knows how honest he was, And who cares? It doesn't matter. But, objectively, Alexander the Great had a better army than all of Achaemenid Persia at the time. In my opinion, I don't know what was going on in China at the time, because, I don't know. I'm an American, and I guess, I don't know. I don't even know if they write about that. If they did, cool, I'd be happy to read about it, but, But at that time, there was no better army in the world than Alexander the Great, and he's fighting much, much, much weaker enemies. Now, he does run into a little trouble, and this is why I think the most blatant... People say, oh, Alexander is undefeated, can't be beat. Okay, what happened in India then? You're telling me Alexander, after conquering all of the Persian Empire, telling everyone he plans on conquering the world, you're telling me he wins a battle against King Porus and decides to stop there? How does that make sense? No. What happened in India is Alexander lost at the Battle of the Hydaspes River. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then he was like, okay, guys, so we're all going to say you just really wanted to go home and I left this Indian guy in power. Because there's no way you can convince me that Alexander the Great, the fucking alcoholic, narcissistic, megalomaniac, after winning a battle, would leave another man on the throne. And the whole, his men mutinied. His men had mutinied before. What did he do? He executed a shit ton of them. Don't try and act like, oh, Alexander cared about his men so much. He knew how they felt. He cared about them. That is so stupid. Alexander didn't give a fuck about those men. They were a means to an end to him. Which brings me to another point. Alexander was kind of a giant cunt. And it was his cuntiness that probably got him killed. He died mysteriously at the age of 33? So you're telling me that he was beginning to think of himself as a god. He could barely control himself because he was busy getting drunk and having sex with boys and women that weren't his wife. He couldn't even produce an heir, or the time he did get sick, he couldn't name a successor. He was so butthurt and so bitch-made, he couldn't see what he had accomplished live beyond him because he's such a fucking bitch. A real man, Ghengis Khan, would have been like, hey, you're my successor. Boom. Easy day. End of story. And he wouldn't have cared if his men would have mutinied, because his men never would have mutinied, because they saw him like a god. Honestly, Alexander either drank himself to death or his generals, the Diadochi, the successor kings, poisoned him. And then after they poisoned him, Antigonus, Ptolemy, Seleucus, all of those people would divide his empire up like a pizza. If Alexander was so great, don't you think they'd be like, hey, let's look to maybe this child that could be born that would be Alexander's heir. Let's keep this together in the name of Alexander. No, you idiots are so dumb, you believe the propaganda that they wrote about him in order to prop themselves up. What's the common thing that idiots like to say? Like, history is written by the winner? That's not true. For most of history, even the winner couldn't fucking write. For most of history, most people could not write. The people who did write, they weren't writing an objective tale of what happened. It's not just they could get on www.facebook.com, type in their stupid fucking opinion, and send it off. That's not how things worked. And in my opinion, Alexander's empire did not outlast his lifetime, but at least 3 of his generals did. Antigonus, the Macedonian Empire, you know who beat them? The Roman Republic. Seleucus, the Seleucids, who beat them? The Romans. The Ptolemies, who beat them? The Romans. Who beat the Hellenic world? The Romans. Pyrrhus of Epirus, the Romans. Alexander the Great, I would have loved to see him try. It's disrespectful that people would even attempt to compare Alexander the Great to someone like a Subutai Batar or a Julius Caesar or a Ghengis Khan. It's absolutely disrespectful. And you know what? I'm not one of those people, but I'm about to say it's racist. Because white people are so fucking dumb and so Eurocentric that they don't look outside of Europe. Subutai, one fucking illiterate Mongol, absolutely destroyed the Eastern European world with 20,000 dudes, right? I'll get into Napoleon versus the great Khan himself one day, but just know that's coming. Don't let me get too far off topic. Anyway, I'm just saying, Alexander the Great had about the best starting point that anyone could ask for. If this was Total War, he would be a very easy difficult. Matter of fact, it'd be a trivial difficulty. Now, if it was a little bit earlier in history, if he was fighting, I don't know, let's say the Neo-Assyrian Empire at its height, I do not think Alexander the Great is even remembered. I think if Assyria somehow, the Neo-Assyrian Empire at its height, somehow decides to stop doing atrocities and like making all its neighbors hate it, and they decide to invade Greece, or like they destroy the Greco-Persian Wars Greece, absolutely 100%. And if Alexander tries to invade the Neo-Assyrian Empire at its height, absolute dunzo. Done. Not a single chance. Right? And I'll prove it. The Neo-Assyrian Empire at its height had a manpower pool of, estimates say, 300,000. And they had multiple field armies of 50,000 men. And these weren't the Persian semi-barbarian armies. They had professional standing armies with iron weapons. Better trained armies, or at least equally trained infantry to Alexander the Great. Much, much, much better cavalry. And cavalry wins battles. That's what Alexander's big thing was. Okay, what's Alexander going to do when his little mob of companions and Thessalians and all those people, they run up against, I don't know, 10 times as many, better trained, more heavily armored, as Eastern cavalry tended to be, horsemen? What does he do? He dies. They shoot him full of arrows, then they charge him. It's game over. And at the battle of, I want to say, I think it's Gaugamela, where friggin' Darius third runs at Gaugamela, and I don't remember. He runs at 2 battles. You know who wouldn't have run? Any Assyrian king. None of them. If Tiglath-Pileser would have been there, he never would have run. And Darius running at the Battle of the Gaugamela is the only reason he managed to win that battle. I'm like, Alexander almost lost multiple battles to this much, much, much inferior force. He never, ever, not once, faced a comparative force to his own. Now imagine he had to fight the Assyrians. Tell me what he does. Please, I beg you, tell me it goes in his way. I'm just saying, history is written by the people that know how to write, or the people who are strong enough to get those that know how to write for them. Alexander the Great had a really, really, really good PR team. But he should be called Alexander the Bitch. Stay motivated.